Hey cuties, we back at it again. Krispy Kreme. We over here doing some more enlisting. Try to find my phone quick. Don't know why I have to be so stupid and misplace it all the time, especially right when I start the stream. I don't necessarily need it, but I figured having it. Yeah, here we go. Having it charging while I got this chat up is probably a good idea. Anyway, we're gonna be picking up doing the same old, just grinding for these stupid pistols that probably aren't even good. I actually need to check, like, what is my USA pistol situation? Yeah, they got the Browning high powers. I really doubt that this weapon is better than the Browning high power. This thing might be worth getting, maybe. I don't know, it depends what BR it is. Watch it be 4. Anyway, so we're locking in today. We need to do 3 battles. Trying to get... Those are gonna get themselves. We don't even need to try. Alright, so top 20 twice? I think not. I think we're re-rolling that. 15 with headshots. That's a lot better, maybe? Possibly. We're gonna go ahead and queue. And I'm gonna go ahead and start up Nate Hagen's TGS 191 a little bit before where we left off yesterday. Here we go.
When you really look at what a lot of these models are capable of doing in terms of directing your attention, especially reflexive attention, right? So a lot of people, when they talk about attention, they're talking about kind of control, like directing the spotlight of attention. But if you're like me, do an inventory of like what you care about and where your values are. The higher this thing is, too, if you started driving Jeeps, it's like, I see them everywhere, and there's not more Jeeps around. It's now you are tuned into those things. You're training your attention to reflexively capture those things.
And once that happens, how difficult is it for the Jeep identity to change to an electric bike identity?
Yeah, I think that it requires a lot of scaffolding, right? I think there's 2 ways to get there in a lot of these kind of situations, and one of them is very effortful. It's the active process of like, you know what, I saw something, I'm reflecting on it. Am I really, like, is driving a Jeep really the best thing? You know, I saw a documentary about the state of the world, and now, you know, that's making me question what I'm doing, and I'm engaging in this forward thought process and really changing my model. And but the other side of it too is, because that's so effortful, oftentimes we can also turn to these groups that are part of our identity. That, like, these are people that I respect. These are people that that kind of give me a sense of what I think should be important. And so if you're surrounded by people that are kind of pushing the whole, like, hey, why are you still driving a Jeep when there's electric cars around? That pressure itself can cause the model to shift as well.
Or the other way, right? They could reject it because it's a threat to their identity.
Absolutely.
And what's the distinction there? How does one time reject and the other time it confirms and moves to something else?
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with where this thing lies on your value list, right? I mean, how often do you actually do an inventory of, like, what you care about, where your values are? The higher this thing is on importance to me, the more I'm going to engage in egoistic, self-protective measures. That's like, this is a core component of who I am, and if you're telling me that this is negative, then I'm going to defend that. I'm oftentimes not going to listen to rational arguments or whatever it is, because I'm engaging in kind of ego protection in these situations. But now, if I'm embedded in a group of people that now, in terms of the value list, the core value list, if I now have belonging as being higher on the list than me being a Jeep person, then now that conformity pressure is going to have a bigger influence on me changing my perspective.
So when we met a few months ago and had a brief conversation, one of the things that I was most interested in unpacking with you, with respect to our cultural challenges ahead, and with respect to identity, was this concept of external or extrinsic motivation or intrinsic motivation, which ties all this together, I think, with values and default mode network and the authentic self. So can you define extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, and how do those affect identity and identity formation?
Coming back to development, you look at a lot of, as we're growing up, a lot of our motivation is kind of given to us from the outside, through rewards, through punishments, through these kind of things, even through internal feeling states, right? It's like things like guilt and shame are also external motivators. It's the fact that I need to belong to this group. I need to kind of get recognition and acceptance from this group, and my behavior is not aligning with that, and so I need to get it in line with these other people. And so a lot of the extrinsic motivation is very tied to all of these things that we've been talking about in terms of externally motivated identity structures and things like that, where you have these outside influences that are telling you what to care about and what your identity should be and what your sense of self should be. And you're now kind of catering a lot of your motivation towards a kind of performative nature, that I need to keep performing this role that I'm in order to get this validation, this recognition, and these signals that I'm doing it right. Whereas intrinsic motivation is the side where I've actually done a lot of the reflective work of really understanding for myself like why I'm doing something, right? We engage in so many things, like the types of social norms that are out there that we never question. The fact that like I have so many students that are just like they're getting a degree because their parents told them to get a degree, and like right that it really requires this reflective element of why am I doing these things? Like what is it about this thing that's really aligned with who I am, with the things that have given me joy, that have like produced passion inside of me, right? And a lot of those things are things that when we talk about motivation, we talk about effort, feel effortless, right? The extrinsic side of it is very effort laden. And the kind of motivation theoretical framework is really interesting. For a while, there was this kind of theory called ego depletion, that we only have like a certain amount of cognitive resources, and once we use those up, then we're not able to think clearly anymore, we're not able to be motivated anymore. And a lot of those theories started to fall apart in the face of kind of intrinsically motivated results. That like, even if this person was kind of deprived of resources and whatever it was, if they were actively enjoying it, if they were passionate about it, they could find the energy, they could find the motivation and continue to engage. And I actually see this in kind of the brain studies that I do, that like when we really get people to think about things that are important to them versus important to other people, it's not effortful. I have people just sitting in a scanner, just listening to stories that either they told or other people told, and their brain is so much more engaged, especially these kind of default mode regions and things, without them trying to be. Just because it's like, oh yeah, that's me, that's important to me, right? And this is something I try to, this is a big part of my philosophy as a teacher. I try to make things as self-relevant as possible through the discussions that I do and everything, because the more you can tie it to who you are and what you like and the things that you do, it becomes so much more effortless to actually integrate it and become like familiar with it.
So would you say that our modern Western culture, one of the big ills facing us is we've somehow, via technology and via the path that we've been on, outsourced our identity so that it's externally, technologically, culturally created, as opposed to in the past or other cultures, it might be more internally constructed and maintained.
It's a hard one to say, because in the past, I wouldn't say that it was entirely intrinsically motivated, because being a part of the group, being a part of the tribe, like serving the role that was ascribed to me at birth, right? I'm a peasant, I was born a peasant, I'm born a farmer, like that was still something that was very externally driven, right? It was still a part of who we are. I think that there's a power in kind of the freedom of the society that we have that allows us to be intrinsically motivated if we want to, because we have more options, we have more availability to actually do that if we're willing to engage and actually like do the work that's required for that kind of stuff. But our system is not designed for that. Our system is designed for immediate consumption, and that's what a lot of these identity narratives push.
Okay, so let's imagine a young person, late teens, early 20s, who has had a very healthy family life, ideal parents, and does well in school and has friends and has a reasonably healthy self-identity perception. But then they start getting exposed and eventually, you might say, addicted to algorithms, ads, social media status, likes, and those things. Can you, as a neuroscientist, describe neurologically and behaviorally when someone's identity starts to be shifted and shaped by external forces like that?
I think a lot of these processes very much mirror the addictive kind of nature of substances themselves, because a lot of these algorithms, a lot of these things are designed specifically to give us short-term replacements for things like acceptance, for things like belonging, things that we have a really strong value for. And it's ironic. I mean, we're more connected than we ever have been, but we're also more lonely than we ever have been. They're hollow versions of what used to be a warm hug, what used to be a vulnerable, reflective moment with another person, right? And instead, we're thinking that we're getting some of these things. We're seeing these other people that are living this connected life or living this perfect life or whatever, and we're seeing something funny, or we're seeing, and it's something that's delivered to us in these short, fast, kind of rewarding ways. And in these situations, whenever I have something in this moment that's giving me value, that's giving me reward, I don't need to engage in long-term planning in these moments because I'm getting something right now that's valuable. Same with a lot of the addictive tendencies of kind of substances and things like that. I think the person that you described is going to have somewhat more resilience to some of these processes because of what they've come from. Because when you look at addiction, a lot of addiction is that I'm engaging in these short-term pleasures because I'm covering up some kind of pain in my life. That it's a form of escapism. That life is hard. I mean, even this person that grew up in this perfect neighborhood, this perfect family, he could have a crappy job. He could be embedded in this hustle culture and just be burnt out and doing a job that's not aligned with who he is and what he wants to do. And that's another thing that pushes him towards okay, well, if I'm not getting what I want from this external environment, then I'm just going to engage in kind of short-term pleasure.
So is there some sort of an overlap or correlation between people that have the temperament and biology leaning towards the tendency towards addiction, and people who are extrinsically motivated and have an externally created identity?
I don't know how much work has been done to say that specifically. I would speculate that that's probably true. We're at a point now, when you look at the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual that therapists use for diagnosis and things like that, there's been a really interesting thing that's happened with the labeling of addictive disorders, right? It started with just certain categories like alcoholism and kind of drug addiction, and we're at the point where now gambling is in the DSM, and that's a behavioral addiction, right? And there's been a lot of push to move things in like technology addiction, phone addiction, and things like that, because you see very similar activation patterns of the brain with these things that you do when people are engaged in addictive substances themselves. You see craving, you see withdrawal. When you take a teenager's phone away from them, I'll show you withdrawal, right? That they're going through this process of now craving that short-term reward that they had, and now there's this friction that they feel because now they have to engage in something that is more effortful.
So I had Robert Sapolsky on the show, and one of the things that he's famous for, at least one of the things that I learned from him back in the day, is we don't seek the reward, we seek unexpected reward, and the intermittence of dopamine, where we're like cherry bar or whatever. And so I'm just thinking that social media and living in a world that has 24/7 access to scrolling and all the things provides us way more intermittent reward landscape than, for instance, hunter-gatherers or growing up as a peasant. So it both adds to our addiction and gradually, in a slow but inexorable way, makes us collectively, as a large group of humans, more extrinsically defined?
Hey, you son of a bitch! Oh, god dang it!
There's so
That
many
was an
things, like,
easy one.
misconceptions
Easy.
about dopamine. And Robert Sapolsky addresses this great. I actually watched your episode with Robert Sapolsky, and I've watched all of his lectures on stress. Like, huge respect for him. I have a very different perspective on determinism.
Me too.
But I think that something that's really interesting there is
should
that
search him
dopamine
up.
is about desire. It's about the pursuit for reward. And when we have these spikes in dopamine, it's usually around these kind of unexpected rewards. We habituate, or we start to like get used to things that we've seen before. And that's very similar to the addictive process, right? That tolerance, that as I continue to do this, I don't get the same kind of reward from it, so now I engage with it more than I used to. But when you look at kind of that desire aspect, that dopamine aspect, it takes a lot more effort to get to a long-term goal than it does to any of these short-term delivery systems that we have now. And I look at attention kind of like a pie chart. Like, we can only pay attention to so many things in a given day. And we live in a culture that pushes these kind of 40 to 60 hour work weeks. And it's this whole thing where, like, okay, you're supposed to work and then you're supposed to go home and relax and engage in these things that you consider relaxing. And it pushes this idea that, like, you need to be spending that time when you're not working, engaging in these mindless things. And so it really doesn't allow for the kind of powerful reflective work that we need to engage in.
So are there similarities between cultivating intrinsically driven identity and addiction recovery processes?
Absolutely. Yeah. Really interesting work from one of my colleagues, Elliot Berkman, has this whole identity value model that he has been looking at the process of kind of value-based choice and addiction and all of these things, and shows that a lot of the people that are successful in overcoming addiction and overcoming kind of weight loss and all of these things are not people that set specific goals, right? I've always been really kind of weary of the idea of like a diet, that you have this like, okay, I'm gonna lose 20 pounds and then I'm done, right? But then what happens when you lose that 20 pounds? Then are you right back to where you were and enjoying the hamburger, right? Instead, what has been really powerful in the research is adopting identities that actually support the behaviors that would be healthy in the first place, right? And so if I can continuously remind myself and build value around the fact that I'm healthy and that being healthy is going to be something that's going to be beneficial long term, I can think about myself 10, 15 years in the future when my joints are starting to break down, and how the
Yeah, we got all three.
and
That's
how
pretty good.
The food I eat now is going to have a huge impact on my longevity, on my overall well-being. I have to engage in these things continuously to remind my brain that that is a value signal. And when I'm able to do
Oh my
that,
gosh.
then it makes the choice different than just like, oh, I'm on a diet and I need to not eat this thing. It's like, no, I don't eat this thing because I'm a healthy person.
So as a behavioral scientist, as a college professor, and as a obviously aware and observant human, when you're at a party or at a cafeteria at a university and you're just looking at lots of humans, can you get just an intuitive sense based on your own pattern recognition of which people are primarily externally validated or intrinsically motivated with their own sense of self just by watching their interactions?
To a certain extent. And I mean, you see this in the students that you interact with.
All right, that's pretty much done.
It's always interesting that like you have this huge class, 150, 200 people, and you really have like a group of like 10 to 15 people that actually care. And that might be kind of oversimplifying it. But you see that there are these people that are like I'm here because this is valuable. That not just because I paid for it, not just because my mom wants me to do it.
Oh, wait a minute. So just caring about something generally, like the people that are watching this podcast, I would put in that category, that they genuinely care about our collective future. So that right there is a clue that they have more of a self-constructed identity instead of externally driven.
I think so, to a large extent. And again, this gets really muddied up because like even this like idea of me valuing the future of humanity and things is still connected socially in some way to this conversation, to this podcast, all of these things. But it's whether or not I'm integrating it with a kind of self-designed value system, right? That like I've heard this thing and that aligns with the work that I've done, the values that I have, the the ideas and reflections that I've gone through where I'm like, you know what, I need to not have this rigid personality, this rigid kind of self and identity model. I need to have something that's more flexible and something that's open to hearing these ideas.
So can you summarize which cognitive functions you...
All right, so that's the new part of it, chapter, whatever, cognitive functions. So we'll pick up there as soon as we're back. I'm gonna go ahead and bounce for now. Y'all take care.